Goku in Team 4-Star, and behind the very, very successful and rather funny YouTube channel, Masako X!
Alright, good morning everyone. Who was here last night? Who was here at the VIP? Nice, good to see you all here, and good to see you all in one piece. But yeah, so basically this is the Ocean Dub panel. We are with our two fabulous guests right here, historic guests as it were. Would you like to introduce yourselves in the most, immodest way possible? Big yourself up as much as you can.
Peter Kelamis, Goku.
That's all you need to say. It's Goku.
It's Goku! And of course, Brian Drummond, Vegeta. OG.
Really?
Really?
So the format of this all is that we are ourselves doing a little kind of, discussion panel about the Ocean Dub. Now, one thing I want to say, and this is something that we had in the UK, is we had the Ocean Dub to begin with, obviously. We had the 53 episode repeating all that, yada, yada, yada. But the one thing that we had was, by the time we got to the Boo Saga, we flitted in between the Funimation dub and the Ocean Dub every 20 episodes or so. So one day we would have Chris Sabat's Vegeta, and then suddenly we have the other Vegeta, going into that, and it was just bizarrely, there was no rhyme or reason. So we got the best of both worlds.
Vegeta. Back and forth.
Yeah, every 20 episodes or so, it was every few weeks, it would just keep jumping back and forth. It was just so strange.
Messing with your young minds. Sorry, wasn't our fault.
But yeah, so the one thing, so I'll start this off. So again, you guys are more than happy to come up and ask questions. So if you have a question, feel free to come up to the top of the stage.
Yes, please.
And I'll give you the mic. You have to give it back eventually. And just say what you want to say. Because these two probably have a lot of stories to tell. Yeah, that are... So many indeed.
There's a few.
But yeah, so I'll start things off. So basically, is there a particular line or scene? For those of you, we might have gone over this last night, but for the people that are here today, is there a particular moment in the booth or just during your time with the character when you were during recording that you were like, this is good, I remember that, or something like that's just stuck with you?
I always like to be honest. Do you guys prefer honesty at these as opposed to, the trying to be the pleasantries of trying to keep that? No, I like to be honest. I did not look forward to doing a Dragon Ball Z session ever while I was working on Dragon Ball Z. Everyone's like, how can you say that? As a voice performer, I'm on a lot of different shows, and we do a lot of different, we do radio commercials, TV commercials. Peter does lots of on-camera work. I'm on other shows during the week. Dragon Ball Z was so hard on my throat because of all the screaming and the power-ups and the massive headaches that would follow. I would never look forward to it when my agent called and said, okay, Brian, you've got a 4-hour booking for Dragon Ball on Tuesday. In my mind would be, oh great, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday work is now ruined because I will not be able to speak on those 3 days.
That's what it was like. It would be like, okay, we're breaking for lunch. And you come back, where were we?
And it was scream after. That was the only show I've ever actually completely lost my voice on, was Dragon Ball Z. It was before some of the rules changed. When we were recording, we're part of a union of BC performers in Vancouver, and we were allowed, when we first started recording this show, to record 8 hours. You could have an 8-hour session. It's now maximum on a show you can do is 4. They don't let you go for 8 hours. So we could dub 8 hours of Dragon Ball Z with a lunch break, and that was insane. I had an 8-hour session of just Vegeta dialogue very early in the series. So much fighting. It was tons of fighting, obviously, in the Saiyan saga with Goku, and I lost my voice. I remember after the session going out for dinner with friends, and I had to write everything I wanted on paper. It wasn't a whisper. It was what? What's going on? So I would write down, what do you want? And I'd show the waiter, water. More water. That was one of my earliest memories. And it came after huge power-up. Barry, who was the producer on the show, early on with Funimation, one of the first Funimation guys, I remember he promised me a box of donuts, which I didn't really want, but he was sitting there munching on donuts while I was doing a power-up. It was a really long one. Vegeta's mouth was just open forever. I remember he was flying. I can still see it. He was flying through the air. And it going on, and I kept running out of air before his mouth closed. And we would stop and say, oh, we didn't quite make it, Brian. It's like, I promise you can have the rest of this box of donuts. If we can just get that through, all the way through to the end, so I don't have to loop it, like sort of add more sound, which they would probably do now. But I remember I managed to get it one time, almost passed out, and that was the day I lost my voice. But fun little story, not so fun to do.
And it was really funny because there'd be times in the series where, two of the characters would face off floating in the sky and looking at each other for like a week and a half. Right? Just last time on Dragon Ball Z. But Brian was right that in the very first few episodes, they would record us, at least for me anyways, chronologically, page 1, page 2, page 3. So you'd be fighting, screaming, 2 lines of dialogue, and then screaming for another 8 pages. And then they switched it very quickly and just said, no, when you come in now, we're going to do all your dialogue first, and then you're going to scream for 7.5 hours. And that's how we did it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I remember there was one other anecdote. I went to a convention in Ireland, so this is already going to be involving some kind of alcohol.
What?
And they were doing a drinking game.
Not Ireland.
A Dragon Ball Z a drinking game. Every time a character screams, take a drink. This was during the Boo Saga.
You had the last 5
And it was just like, there'd be like, somebody scream, 5 seconds. Vegeta goes, yeah! And everyone's go, oh no! I wasn't drinking at that time, so I was just watching and going like, you chose poorly. But yeah, so I actually have individual questions for you both. So, Brian.
Yes.
Now, it was something really fascinating that you said last night about, don't worry, it's totally legit. There was a lot of stuff said, but you had to be there. But there was this one thing you said that when you went into audition for Vegeta, you said that you hadn't seen the picture, you just knew that he was an alien.
Yep.
And I was saying, and that made me think, if you'd actually seen a picture, and you'd actually seen a little bit of Dragon Ball Z, like you had a bit more information, and you'd seen what Vegeta looked like,
Yeah.
would you have done a different interpretation? Would it have been something different?
I may have, yeah. I might have been slightly different, but I don't know how far off. It was fairly early in my career, so I didn't have a giant repertoire of characters that I worked through at that point. But I don't know. Maybe if I think in my mind the whole he's a small alien character from another planet. But you got to realize that I'm seeing this written on paper, a small alien guy from another planet. I'm like, I wasn't visualizing just a sort of small-statured, human-looking male. So that's where I know and when I look back and watch the very first episodes of the work that I did, it's pitched up quite high, and I think I even, as I was doing the series, I slowly started, once I saw him, to go, oh wow, that's way higher than I might have done. I deepened him a little bit as the series went on when I was working with him. But the very first opening scenes that you see of me, it's quite high. Like he's, here we are. Like it's quite pitched up there, and I don't know if I would have done that.
And it definitely was like that, even though when you were like in the giant monkey form, it was like, guess what, Kakarot?
Yes.
I'm having you for lunch.
Exactly.
Even then, it was just like pretty well high pitched, but like, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Peter, did you have a chance to look at the character of Goku when you came in and for your read?
Not really, but I took over from Ian Corlett, who is a friend of mine, friend of ours, and still remains a friend to this day. So he left the role, and I would often audition opposite Ian, as he did opposite me many times for different projects. So we have a similar cadence. So I think that's probably why I ended up getting the part, because we already kind of sounded in the same range. So I went in, hearing the reference of Ian and used that as a template. I had a template, at least. Like you're saying, if you just read he's a small alien, you go in and just go,
He's over 9,000.
that doesn't fit. But if you read that, you know, you obviously made a great choice. But for me, I was taking over from somebody else, so it made it a little bit easier.
Okay, well now I'm just imagining basically Vegeta sounding like the claw aliens from Toy Story.
That would have been fun.
It's like, hey Nappa, there's a strong guy. He's over 9,000.
It'd be a Wizard of Oz, Dragon Ball hybrid.
So Peter, I've seen many clips of your stand-up routines and stuff like that. It's really good stuff.
Thank you.
Has there been any moments of inspiration that in the booth you've been like thinking, oh, here's like a little quip or something like that, or you just like think of this moment in that and you just want to like add some of your comedic flair to it or an interpretation? It's like, say, is there an ad lib that you got to put into the script?
Actually, a fan just asked me that exact question, and we really didn't have much latitude, primarily because we were dubbing. So somebody had already looked at the voice flaps. So when we record, for those who don't know, we're actually doing it to an image of the show, minus the Japanese voices. Sometimes you could hear them faintly in the background, sometimes. But you had to match your dialogue to the voice flaps of the animation, and sometimes that just didn't match up. Because there's Goku, and the line was, hey, let's get out of here. And then it's like, hey, let's get out of here. And then you had to get creative. It's like, hey, you guys, let's get out of here. And you somehow had, that's how we adapted. But we were kind of doing, it was all on the fly.
Yeah, because I remember like it was a response after It's Over 9,000, and the guy who voiced Snapper got like, what, 9,000? There's no way that can be right. Can it? As in like, it's like, in like, it'd be like almost like, nani? As in like, yo, what the? That would be like created with the cadence.
That was our go-to. You add a scream if there's an extra flap. You know, it's like, and these things are delicious.
And there was another one with Brian. It was just like, again, when it was like when Vegeta found out that the ball had been stolen. He's like, I will not get you for this. You won't escape my wrath.
Yeah.
As in, like, just it's weird cadence, but it's just one of those like, he's angry. You give him a pass.
It's difficult to do because our instincts. You can't go always with your acting instinct. It's like, this is how I would say that line. You know, I'd probably, it'd be the over 9,000 one. Over 9,000? That's where it would be. And I've said this before at some conventions, Carl, who was directing the show, and we don't sometimes watch the flaps first. We'll just see the line and go, okay, I'm going to say this. It's over 9,000! And then Carl will be like, oh, it's a little bit longer than that. You're going to have to stretch it out a little bit, Brian. Okay. It's over 9,000! Like a lot longer. There's way more. And then by the time we got through, it's like, okay, I'm just going to, 9,000! And it ends up being a very odd sounding read that wasn't the natural choice to make, but it's the one that, okay, yeah, let's just move on, Brian. That fits. It's weird, but let's move on.
It's kind of like when I did my Kamehameha, it was like one breath. And other actors afterwards would break it up, and people are like, wow, you did it one breath. And it's like, well, nobody told me that I could take a breath, so that's what I did.
Yeah, because it was like the world's strongest. All those moments were just like, wow. Like, not just for the fact that you did that Kaioken, like bam, and it's just like, because it was just like all that, and that was just like, that works. And then you just like went into the moment where Goku's fighting the 3 Bio Warriors, and it's just like, you just go in like really, really into it, like, and just like the proper like high, like, yeah, and it's just like really into it. It's like, that is committed. And
Thank you.
No, absolutely. That's just what makes those 3, the Pioneer movies, really memorable. Definitely.
Thank you.
So, now I get a question for you both. So, it's not very good. We talk about like Dragon Ball and all that stuff, like, but in your spare time, is there any kind of like hobbies that you like to do or that you partake in that provides like things outside of the world of voice acting? So, you're here at Saiyacon, you're here in the fabulous roundabout heaven that is Milton Keynes. Seriously, the nomenclature of V6, H6, it took me so many times, like, what even is that? And then hallucinate, just go, oh no, it's just vertical and horizontal. That makes no sense. But at the same time, it does. But so, what do you like to do in your spare time? You know, in terms of like hobbies.
I know Peter is as well, but I'm pretty pumped right now because hockey season has begun in the NHL, and we're both pretty big NHL fans. We follow the Vancouver Canucks painfully for the past 40 years now.
40
with no
topless years.
40, no championship years. So we've suffered hard for a long time, and we're finally hoping we're going to make some headway this year. But that outside of the work I do in voiceover, I've got 3 kids that are all older now. So I was, during my years of doing a lot of this, I was a pretty busy family guy. They're finally now mostly grown up and off to college and doing their own thing. So I have a little more free time to come to cons now, which is nice. But I love spending time watching a whole lot of hockey, and I play video games and stuff with my son and stuff too. So it's pretty fun.
For me, I started out in stand-up. So for me, it used to be coming to newer towns. I would try to get to the closest comedy club and do a spot. You know, I don't do it as much anymore. I still do occasionally, but for me, that was a big thing. And I love motorcycling. We had a daughter, so I took a break I sold the bike, which is very painful, right? Like, you know, you have a Harley, and then you're like, okay, it's time to say goodbye for a few years until you try to be a responsible parent. So I put it away for a while, sold it, and who knows? I think when she graduates, I'm gonna pull up on a Harley, like a new one.
Because I know that Ian's much of a petrol head as well.
Oh yeah.
So you guys like really start, because I follow his Twitter, and it's just like, that's a guy who's got a nice style, and I like motor racing as well. I'm thinking, oh man, that's great. Because I've been to Vancouver a few times as well, and I love it. You know, just having a walk around the town and just like, absolutely love the Japadog.
The Japadogs.
Yeah, that's a really nice place. Yeah, because I stayed at like the Metropolitan, so it's just like right in the middle of Vancouver. It's really, really nice. So again, I can totally attest. And
it's a beautiful city if you have a chance to visit.
And I did buy a Canucks jersey.
Oh, yeah. Hey,
I was like, hey, well, come on, Vancouver's best. Absolutely.
I guess, and that's another. I don't know if there's a hobby or not, but me and my wife really like wine.
Oh.
For years back, I got a commercial campaign for Robert Mondavi, who's a master at a California winery, world renowned, and I did their TV commercials. I was turned into the cardboard cutout for their campaign, and it was this mass campaign, and they kind of introduced me to wine, and we got to drive down to Napa Valley. We stayed in the home that they grew up in. They put us up there, and were their personal guests, and it was an incredible experience, and it opened me up to the whole world of wine. So even coming here, we went to the Walmart superstore next door, and there I am,
wine section,
checking out the wine section, because it's so great coming to Europe and seeing all these fantastic European wines, the Italian, French wines, on and on. So for me, that's kind of an interesting thing for me.
Well, I could definitely give you a recommendation for a good English wine.
Yep.
It's a vineyard that my uncle lives right next to. It's called Denby's, and it's like a huge English vineyard. It's down in the middle of Surrey, so it's like just a bit further down south.
Okay.
But if you have some time to head down there, it's a huge vineyard, and it's like some of the best English wine that you could have. It's a nice little store.
The type of stuff I love to hear.
Yeah, and again, it's really, really nice. And again, my uncle swears by it, and he doesn't often drink wine, but that wine means a lot nearest and dearest to him.
And his uncle swears a lot, so.
He swears a lot.
Well, actually, no, but he goes on for a long period of time. But seriously, because we're actually getting married next month, and there's like a church up top which used to be owned by the people who owned Denby's. Wow. So it was like where all the workers used to go. So it was part of that. So hey, you make the tipple, and then you go to church in the morning and the end of the night. But it was just like it's just like a nice little. It's deepest, darkest Surrey. Very, very quaint. But again, if you have some time to get some Denby's wine, I seriously recommend it.
Nice.
Yes.
Tip number 1. Questions? Yes, we have some.
Well, it's not just tip number 1; it's tipple number 1.
Ah.
Hi. So we know that like foods like chocolate and cheese like coat the throat and make the voice sound weird. Are there any other foods that maybe we wouldn't think of that maybe you ate before a session or at lunch and suddenly, oh, my voice is all different now?
Cigars.
Well, that would do it.
No, seriously, like we used to have a regular kind of poker night with me and my comedian buddies, and we still try to do it every now and then. And there were times like the next day I have to record, and I'm like, I don't care, I'm gonna have a cigar. And you show up at the session, you're like, but it's seriously like when it's like flu season. You see a lot of actors in there with their Ricola cough drops and
hot teas and honey and lemon
throat
and
sprays.
yeah, it's a common sight to see. Nimjam, that's another one. That Asian sort of syrupy stuff that you coat your throat when it gets really wrecked. It's called Nimjam, and it kind of just tastes like a sweet syrup, really. But it's a popular one for voice performers to use when they're feeling that scratchy, crackly kind of voice come on. But yeah, I usually do avoid dairy products. Like you said, are usually the one. You don't want to go into a session and saying, I'm going to have a big bowl of yogurt right before doing Dragon Ball Z. That's probably not a good idea. Have some juice instead, or some hot tea.
In my like 30 years or so doing voice work, I think I've missed one session due to not sounding close enough to my own character. So it's a pretty good average. But
Yeah.
luckily, it doesn't happen too
I actually
often.
find it kind of fun sometimes when I'm watching an animated show that I've seen before and I can tell someone has a cold. I'm like, oh. Even when I was a kid, I was like, Grover sounds different on Sesame Street. Oh, Jim Henson's got a cold today.
You know what happened to me once? I laid down an audition for a commercial, and I thought I did pretty good with it. It was supposed to be it's kind of a comical Italian character. So I did it, and then I didn't get it, and then I heard the commercial, and I called my agent, and I go, "That's me! They used my audition, and they're not paying me for it." And it turns out it was Vincent Tong.
Wow.
It was another actor, and it just by chance we went in and sounded almost identical, and I couldn't tell the difference.
Wow.
And he got paid. Good for him.
Wow.
Yeah, this my question is for Brian.
Yeah, sure.
2 words: copy Vegeta.
Yes.
In Dragon Ball Super.
Yeah.
And how did that feel coming back voicing a different Vegeta while Vegeta was on the same screen with him? It was just like, oh, Ocean Dub, I'm fighting against you. Oh no, just that's metaphorically, that's almost like Ocean Dub fighting Funimation at the same time on the screen.
I never even thought of it that way, but hey, how about that? You know, it was fabulous. I'm friends with Chris, and he sent me a text quite early in the summer before that show came around and asked me, he's like, hey, if something came up on Dragon Ball Super, like a role, would you maybe be interested in doing it? And I was like, well, yeah, I said I would certainly consider that. Let me know what it is. It might be weird because of the characters I played in the past, but let me know. I didn't hear anything for a little while, and then I think it was October of a couple months before that episode came out. The turnaround was quite quick, and he called me up and said, there's a part coming that's kind of cool. It's actually Vegeta. And I was like, what? It's a copy version of me, this kind of purple blob that becomes Vegeta and takes my powers, but Ryo Horikawa did both roles in the Japanese version, but I thought it might be kind of fun, and I talked to Funimation about it, and they were cool with it. It might be kind of fun if you did the copy just as kind of a fun throwback for the fans. And I was like, that sounds like an amazing idea. To come back as a different character would be a little weird. So we did it, and I recorded in Vancouver, and I wasn't able to go to Dallas or anything, which worked. I just did it in Vancouver in one morning in 4 hours, and they took the work that we did. There was a director who was directing me from Dallas, but the work was done where we are. And a month and a half later, it was on, and people went crazy. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely, because it was just the build-up towards that when it came out that Brian Drummond would be doing voice Vegeta, everyone lost their mind. And it was just seeing that first promo, it was like, is this what you're going to do to me? And it's just like, oh, that's Vegeta. But it's like, evolved a little bit. But it's just like, yeah, now that copy Vegeta section of that little mini arcs, quite frankly, saved that 3-episode arc.
Yeah, it's a filler arc, that's for sure.
It's not a good one, because
No.
Gotenks goes Super Saiyan 3 and does nothing.
Yeah.
And it's basically about Monarca, and like, that's it.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, quite frankly, with Copy Vegeta, or as I like to call him, is Jelly Vegeta.
Jelly Vegeta,
It's
yeah.
Jelita. And that was just like, it's a good way because Paul Vegeta, in many different ways, he usually ends up getting like absorbed by somebody or changed into somebody. He's now copied by somebody. And just the vision of just seeing Sabbath's Vegeta with a pacifier in his mouth. That's an enduring memory super right there.
Yeah.
Alright, I believe you had a question right there. We need more microphones, but
Oh, it's all good.
yeah, it's alright.
Okay, so this is for Peter.
Yes.
In continuation of the last question, how do you feel about Goku Black? Do you think you could have done it better than Sean?
I think I would have done my version, given the opportunity.
Can we hear a little snippet?
Well, I almost don't want to because I don't. It would just. No, I don't want to. Let me put it this way: I would have loved to have had the opportunity to do it.
Because, I was kind of thinking when Brian voiced Copy Vegeta that it might be on the table. Even if it was just, a little cameo.
It would have been fun to hear.
I can understand. No, I can say I can absolutely understand the apprehension. It's a big part because Copy Vegeta's around just for a couple of episodes. Goku Black is there for like the entire arc.
Yeah.
It's a big commitment, and
No, the commitment wasn't the issue.
Understand. I understand. It's a
Yeah, so I'm treading on this topic carefully. There was I don't know. I got to be careful here.
that's okay.
No, I just there was some interest in that, but it didn't. Unfortunately, it didn't get to do the part.
Okay, so basically, there were things, but basically, I would say, imagine just due to various things, time or other reasons, it just didn't really happen. So it just kind of just fell by the
It
wayside.
wasn't time. No, other reasons, but it didn't happen. It's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
that's understandable. These things happen. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
But I'll come to you next, Steph. You have one?
You look fantastic, by the way.
Yes, great cosplay.
I've got a question for both of you. A lot of people don't know that Brian, you voiced Vegeta, and I didn't know until I heard it.
Yes.
And then I want to ask you I want to ask the two of you, for specifically Vegeta, and for specifically Goku, what did you do to get the voices? Especially for Vegeta, because you didn't do a dual voice in the Ocean dub.
No, yeah, we didn't in the Ocean dub. They just, I think they talked to Kirby, who was doing Goku at that time, but I think they thought maybe they just thought I could sort of do a meld thing in the middle. They just said, try and sound a bit like Kirby's Goku and then have a hint of Vegeta in there, as opposed to us trying to layer two voices on top of each other. Plus it costs more money because you got to get two performers to do everything, and when you're trying to voice match the exact same cadence of the other guy over top, it's a little complicated. So they thought maybe they could just get me to try and sound a bit more like Goku with somewhat of Vegeta's voice. So that's what I did, and they said, yeah, that works. It's not too far away from Vegeta, and it's a little bit towards what Goku is sounding like, and it sounds different enough that it could be a new character of its own. So yeah, that's how we did that one. I think they considered trying to put our two voices together, but they just didn't. They thought it's going to be more complicated. Let's just try and get one person to do it to make the recording a little bit easier. Did they do it with two voices with Funimation?
Yes, they did.
They did, yeah.
And I think it's because they had some practice with the games. They were basically, from what I could tell from the behind-the-scenes thing for Budokai 3,
Yeah.
is that they would have Mr. Shamel and Sabbath in the same room at the same time.
Right.
And if we ever did that with Team 4-Star, we would always because Vegeta is mainly Vegeta.
Yeah.
So Lanny Pator would record his lines and I would record mine. So that's how we would do it. So
Right.
that's just due to the fact we work remotely. But down in Dallas, they would have done it at the same time.
Yeah.
So that means they have this thing about they know what the line is, they know they kind of the beats and the rhythms.
Yeah.
That's how they do it. But
Well, we do lots of things on shows where you record something that you have to layer with another actor. I mean, that's not that hard to do. Someone else just says it first, and you listen and you do it the exact same cadence. and put it right on top. So they could have done that. It wouldn't have been that difficult, but it definitely would have taken more recording time, more studio time, more time for both performers. And I think they just made a choice at Ocean. Let's just try and do it with one guy. And if their clients were happy with that, they probably sent what I did and said, "Are you happy with this version?" They were probably like, "Yeah, sure, let's go for it."
Well, that's like me. I played Master Roshi for one episode. I think it was just maybe one line. I can't remember, and that's simply because I was already in the studio, and the other actor wasn't there, and they were just like, "Yeah, read this part," and I was like, "All right, okay." Fired up, and then. So a lot of people don't know that I had played Master Roshi very briefly. Corlett did, yeah. So there's an example where Goku and Master Roshi kind of flipped the roles temporarily.
Wow.
The master, the student emulating the master.
That's
Exactly.
right.
So, a very quick question.
Yeah.
Was there ever a role that passed you by that you would love to have had during your career? Like, whether it be a part that was initially pitched to you, but you turned it down because of commitments, or a role that you didn't have any clue whatsoever, but you took a second glance and just went, "Oh, I wish I had that part. I wish I could have done that role."
That's a good question.
That is a good question. It kind of came around for me, so I was happy to still be able to do it. I really wanted to play Wolverine in an X-Men series that was done in the early 2000s in Vancouver. I did not get that part. Scott McNeil got it and did a fabulous job, but I was a big Wolverine fan. But years later, I ended up landing the role of Wolverine for a number of animated movies. I think we did 4 or 5 of them, and I got to play them in a bunch of fun movies, and actually some darker ones that were motion comic style, that were based right off the actual comic books. So I got to play my favorite Marvel character, who's Wolverine. I got to come around to do it later in my life. So that was probably my biggest early on disappointment in my career, but it kind of got resolved later when I did get a chance to do it, which was fabulous.
I've had so many instances where I came very close to roles, and some of them kind of comedically. If you guys remember The X-Files, I read for every one of the lone gunmen, every one of them, and didn't get any of them. And then I ended up on the show like 4 times after that in different roles, different capacities. But obviously the lone gunman, Dean Haglund, the long blonde-haired guy, Langley, was a very good buddy of mine. We used to do improv together. And obviously they were on the show for years.
Had their own series briefly.
Had their own series for a while. The role of Walter Harriman on Stargate, the guy who dials the gate. Gary Jones got that part. I read for that. And that was a hilarious audition because we got the script and it was like, okay, just do the lines. Okay, Chevron 1 locked. Chevron 2 locked. Chevron 3. I can keep going. Chevron 4 locked. Thank you. Didn't get that, and he ended up working for 17 years on that show. One that kind of stung a little bit was, you guys did you see The Watchmen? The film Watchmen? I got a call to audition for the role of Richard Nixon, which I don't think physically I had a complete match for, but they gave me the part, and it was going to be a heavily prosthetic performance, so they're going to be buried under prosthetics. So eventually, although I was there physically, it was a heavy voice match. So I studied it for a good week, and I thought I got pretty close. It was like, the United States does not start war. So I got pretty close, I thought. So then I went to the audition, and Zack Snyder was there at the audition. And then I auditioned, did the thing, and he's like, that was great. That was great. And he's looking around to his producers next to him. He goes, yeah, right? And they're all like, yeah. And he's like, have you done prosthetics before? And I'm like, yes, many, many times. And he's like, okay, so you'd be available to come down to LA for a makeup test like in 2 weeks? And I'm like, yeah? You know, usually you don't get this kind of affirmation
In the audition.
In the audition room. They go through your agent, could take weeks or months. So it's all sounding pretty good, and I'm on my way home. Like 20 minutes later, I haven't got home yet. My agent calls and they go, I think you're getting this. And it was a really big deal at the time, this film. And they go, so we're just waiting for them to call, but they already called and said, it looks like it's going your way. And I'm like, wow, this is this huge project. And then we waited, and then we got word back that the studio, I was approved by Zack Snyder, I was approved by the studio, and they had a big table meeting, and somebody at the table, I don't know who it was, one of the executives said, well, you know what, Richard Nixon is an American icon, and I think we should get an American to play him. Oh. And I was out.
Wow.
And I was like, what do we get an American to play him? Didn't Anthony Hopkins play Richard Nixon?
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I didn't get it, and that one stung. That one stung.
I can imagine that. That's like, you got everything, and like, yeah, the director himself was like, yeah, you're great,
Yeah,
I want
he's
you
the guy.
guys.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, that's just wrong. But,
Yeah.
oh, if you'd like to come up, I think we'll make this the last question
Sure.
before the thing rounds up, but... Oh, yeah, so we talked earlier about Ed, and Eddie.
Yes.
I'm curious, Rolf, what accent is that? Where is he from?
Where is it?
That is a secret that I have kept forever, and I will never really reveal where he's from, because he is a bit of a hybrid. I'm come from a Greek background, so it's kind of a mix of my relatives who speak English with a really bad accent, and everybody in the region that I would listen to. So it was a mishmash of a lot of things. That's another story too. Ed and Eddie, I went in and I read for Ed, didn't get it. I went in for Double D, didn't get it. Went in for Eddie, didn't get it. And I was out. I was out of the mix at that point. I'm like, well, that's it for the characters, right? That's it. And I went with somebody else who was auditioning for another role. And I was literally outside of the studio, not auditioning that day whatsoever because I was done. Danny Antonucci ran out of the studio, sees me, and he goes, hey, we got this foreign kid. You want to come in and read for it? And I was like, sure. So they gave me the lines, the sides, and I had a picture of Rolf, and I had about 5 minutes.
Come up with something.
I just ran in and said,
What are you doing it, boy?
and that was it. That was it. And, you know, it's so weird in this industry. Sometimes I was talking about the Watchmen thing where it was you audition and you wait weeks for word. I had 5 minutes on this one to come up with a voice, and then the show went on for 10 years. So you never know what to expect.
I was telling someone that earlier with Death Note. I had like 4 or 5 roles that I was going in to read. None of them were Ryuk from Death Note, but when I showed up at the studio, I saw the picture of Ryuk on the wall, because they sometimes put the pictures up for you to see them. You don't initially get to, but you see them when you show up at the studio. And I was like, geez, all the rest just look kind of like normal anime character guys, and then there was this creepy looking demon guy, which wasn't one of the characters I was getting to read, and I've always loved to do the bad guys. I thought he was a villain, which he wasn't really. And I asked when I went in after I read my other roles, I asked the director, can I read for that Ryuk sort of creepy looking guy too? That one looks really fun. He's like, oh, sure, yeah, you're ahead of schedule. You got your other stuff done. Let's go for it. And I read that one, and I didn't get any of the other parts I read for, but I got Ryuk. So it's funny how that happens.
That happened to me once. There was a show called Class of the Titans.
Oh, yeah.
An animated show, and I went in, read for a bunch of characters that they had provided. Sometimes they say, you know, we want to see Brian, and we want to have him read for character A, B, and C.
Yeah.
So that's what happened here. They had me go in, and they're like, oh, we want you to read for this character, that guy. And then I was done. They were like, okay. And I said, can I read for Grandma Hercules? And they were like, yeah, okay. Well, yeah. And I went, no, I'm serious. And they were like, okay. So I just did my Greek grandmother. That's who that was.
He's like, oh, Harry, you look tired. Why don't you lay down for a while?
It's Rolf.
It was a version of Rolf. So there's a hint as to where Ralph's from. Ralph is my great grandmother.
Alright, awesome. Well, I think that shall be wrapping up today's Ocean Dub panel, so thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Great
for
questions.
listening. So, coming up next, we have the What If discussion panel with myself, Kwaman, as well as an extra special last minute guest, Haverock. So, he'll be on my research buddy. So, expect that in about 10-ish minutes or so.